June 10, 1963. 8:47 p.m. Small's Paradise Nightclub, 135th Street and 7th Avenue, Harlem. The restaurant was full, 250 people, maybe more. Waiters moved between tables carrying plates of fried chicken and collard greens. A jazz trio played soft in the corner. The air was thick with smoke and conversation. It was a normal Friday night in one of Harlem's most important establishments. And then the door opened. Marcus Smooth Henderson walked in at exactly 9 p.m., dressed in a cream-colored suit with a burgundy tie, diamond rings on 3 fingers, gold watch catching the light. He had 4 bodyguards with him. He looked like a man who owned the place. He did own it. Or at least he owned the protection that kept Small's Paradise operating without police raids. Smooth walked toward table 7 in the back corner, his usual spot. That's when he saw him. Bumpy Johnson was sitting at table 8, right next to Smooth's table, with his back to the wall. Bumpy was 61 years old. His hair was gray now. 11 years in Alcatraz had aged him, but his eyes, those eyes hadn't changed. They were still cold, still calculating, still the eyes of a man who'd survived everything. Smooth's blood turned to ice. He hadn't seen Bumpy in 11 years. Nobody had. Bumpy had been locked away, counted days, written letters that nobody answered. And Smooth had been here, running Harlem, spending money that wasn't his, sleeping in beds paid for with stolen profit. Bumpy turned his head slowly and looked at Smooth. No expression. No anger visible. Just a look that said, "I've been waiting for this moment." Then Bumpy spoke, his voice quiet enough that only Smooth and his bodyguards could hear. "Sit down, Marcus." It wasn't a request. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand how Marcus Smooth Henderson got into that position in the first place. Smooth wasn't a boss. He was a lieutenant. A sharp young hustler from 118th Street who Bumpy had taken under his wing in 1947, when Smooth was just a kid looking for direction. Bumpy saw potential in him. Raw intelligence. Ambition. The kind of hunger that either made you powerful or got you killed. So Bumpy taught him. He showed Smooth how the numbers game worked. How to run policy banks. How to move money without leaving traces. How to handle collectors and runners. How to negotiate with the Italians. How to keep the community happy while extracting profit. Bumpy gave Smooth everything: protection, access, respect. He introduced him to the right people. He showed him what real power looked like. For 5 years, Smooth learned. And he learned well. By 1952, Smooth was one of Bumpy's most valuable operators. He managed collections across 3 blocks. He handled distribution for the heroin operation. He was trusted. Then came March 1952. Bumpy was arrested on a conspiracy charge that everyone knew was politically motivated. The charges were thin. The evidence was circumstantial. But the trial was rigged and Bumpy was convicted. Sentenced to 15 years. He was shipped to Alcatraz. Before he left, Bumpy had a conversation with Smooth. Just the two of them. In a room with locked doors. "Take care of things," Bumpy said simply. "Run the organization. Keep the money flowing. Send money to my wife. I'm counting on you." Smooth had promised. He was terrified. Bumpy was gone. The organization was his responsibility now. But he could do it. He was ready. For 2 years, Smooth kept his word. Money flowed. Operations continued. Collections were made. Runners were managed. Bumpy's wife received her stipend every month. The organization hummed along without the boss. Then, in 1954, something shifted. The Italian mafia had been trying to muscle into Harlem for years. With Bumpy gone, they smelled opportunity. They sent representatives. They made offers. They explained, very carefully, that Harlem was too big, too profitable, too valuable to be run by one black man, even if that black man was in prison. Smooth listened. They told him he could keep running things, but he'd have to pay tribute. Not the small amounts Bumpy had negotiated in the 1940s. Real money. 40% of net profits. In exchange, they'd provide protection, access to their heroin suppliers, and most importantly, they'd leave him alone to operate. Smooth did the math in his head. 40% was a fortune. But it was less than 50%. And it was more than nothing. He made the deal. Within months, Smooth was getting rich in ways he'd never imagined. The Italian suppliers were better than anything Bumpy had access to. The heroin was purer. The volume was higher. The profits were enormous. Smooth kept a percentage. Sent a percentage to the Italians. And kept the rest. The money to Bumpy's wife stopped coming. Not all at once. Smooth wasn't stupid enough to do something that obvious. But gradually. One month it was late. The next month it was small. By 1956, nothing was being sent. Bumpy noticed. Of course he noticed. But he was in Alcatraz. He couldn't do anything about it. For 7 more years, Smooth ran Harlem like he owned it. He lived in a penthouse apartment with a view of Central Park. He drove a midnight blue Cadillac Eldorado. He wore Italian suits that cost $400. He had 40 men on his payroll. He had 5 policy banks running numbers across the neighborhood. And he told himself that Bumpy was never coming back. That was his first mistake. June 7, 1963. Bumpy walked out of Alcatraz carrying everything he owned in a paper bag. He was 61 years old. 11 years older than when he went in. Gray in his hair. Lines in his face. But his eyes hadn't changed at all. He didn't go home when he arrived in New York. Didn't embrace his wife. Didn't stop to rest after the 3-day train ride from San Francisco. He went straight to Junie Bird's apartment on 145th Street. Junie was 63 years old, gray-haired, but loyal to his last breath. He'd been watching Harlem for 11 years. Keeping track. Remembering. "Give me names," Bumpy said. Not even sitting down. Junie had a list ready. He'd spent 11 years watching, listening. He rattled off 15 names. Men who'd gotten rich while Bumpy was locked away. Men who'd carved up his territory like he was never coming back. But one name made Bumpy's jaw tighten. Marcus Henderson. Smooth. The kid Bumpy had raised. The kid he'd trusted with everything. "Where does he eat?" Bumpy asked. "Small's Paradise," Junie said. "Every Friday night, table 7. Shows up at 9 o'clock like clockwork." Bumpy looked at his watch. It was Friday, 6 p.m. "Get me a table right next to his," Bumpy said. At 8:45 p.m., Small's Paradise was filling up. The weekend crowd arriving. Hustlers, musicians, working folks spending their paychecks on good food and cold beer. The 3-piece jazz combo was warming up in the corner. Waiters moved between tables carrying trays of fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread. Bumpy Johnson walked in at 8:50 p.m. He was wearing the same suit he'd worn on the train from California, a charcoal gray number that had seen better days. His shoes were scuffed. He carried no visible weapon. He looked like a ghost. Like something from Harlem's past walking into its present. The restaurant didn't go silent. But conversations shifted. Eyes tracked him as he moved through the crowd. Old-timers recognized him immediately. Younger hustlers who'd only heard stories whispered to each other. That's Bumpy Johnson. I thought he was dead. Man got out of Alcatraz 3 days ago. Bumpy walked straight to table 8, right next to where Smooth always sat. Junie Bird was already there, along with Willie Fish Jackson and Raymond Quick Lewis. 3 old-timers who'd stayed loyal. 3 men who remembered what Harlem was like when Bumpy ran it. Bumpy sat down with his back to the wall, facing the entrance. Old habit. Never sit with your back to the door. At exactly 9 p.m., Marcus Smooth Henderson walked in. Smooth was 38 years old now. Dressed in a cream-colored suit with a burgundy tie. Diamond rings on 3 fingers. Gold watch. He had 4 men with him, bodyguards who looked like they'd never missed a meal. Smooth was laughing about something, holding court, acting like he owned the place. He did own the protection that kept the place operating. Smooth's crew headed for table 7. That's when Smooth saw Bumpy. He stopped mid-step. The blood drained from his face. His bodyguards noticed the change and followed his gaze. When they saw Bumpy Johnson sitting there, calm as Sunday morning, their hands moved toward their waistbands. Bumpy didn't move. Didn't react. Just looked at Smooth with those empty, calculating eyes. "Marcus," Bumpy said quietly. His voice carried across the restaurant even though he barely raised it above a whisper. "Come sit with me." It wasn't a request. Smooth's bodyguards tensed. One of them, a thick-necked enforcer named Leon, stepped forward. "Mr. Henderson, don't take meetings without." Junie Bird stood up. He was 63 and looked harmless, but the .45 automatic in his hand looked very serious. The man said sit down, Junie said softly. Suddenly, guns were everywhere. Smooth's 4 bodyguards had their hands inside their jackets. Junie had his .45. Willie Jackson produced a sawed-off shotgun from under the table. Quick Lewis had a revolver pointed at Leon's chest. The restaurant froze. The jazz combo stopped playing. Waiters backed toward the kitchen. Customers dove under tables. But Bumpy Johnson didn't even blink. "Tell your boys to go home, Marcus," Bumpy said. "This conversation is between you and me." Smooth's mouth opened and closed like a fish. His hands were shaking. He looked at his bodyguards, looked at the guns, looked at Bumpy's calm, terrifying face. "Go," Smooth whispered to his crew. "Leave. Now." "Boss," Leon started. "I said go." The bodyguards backed toward the door, hands still on their weapons, eyes locked on Junie's .45. They didn't want to leave, but they also didn't want to die in Small's paradise on a Friday night. When they were gone, Bumpy gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Sit." Marcus Henderson sat. Bumpy signaled a waiter. The young man approached nervously, avoiding eye contact. "Bring us a plate of ribs," Bumpy said. "The good ones. And 2 glasses of bourbon." The waiter practically ran to the kitchen. The restaurant was dead silent now. 250 people frozen in place, watching table 7 like it was a stage. Even the kitchen staff had stopped cooking. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew this was history. The food arrived. The waiter set down a full plate of ribs, still steaming, glazed with sauce. 2 glasses of bourbon. Then he disappeared. Bumpy pushed the plate toward Smooth. "Eat," he said. Smooth stared at the ribs like they were poisoned. "I'm not hungry, Bumpy." "Eat," Bumpy repeated. "Because this is your last meal." That's when Smooth understood. This wasn't a negotiation. This wasn't a conversation. This was an execution with an audience. "Bumpy, please," Smooth's voice cracked. "I had to survive. You were gone. The Italians were taking everything. I made a deal to save the organization." "You made a deal to save yourself," Bumpy said quietly. You gave them my policy banks. My collectors. My roots. You told Genovese everything. And then you kept the money that should have gone to my wife. Tears were running down Smooth's face now. I was going to make it right. I swear I was waiting for you to come home. I've been home for 3 days, Marcus. You didn't come see me. Didn't send word. Didn't send money to May to make up for 11 years of nothing. Bumpy leaned forward. You thought I was never coming back. Thought you'd gotten away with it. Please, Bumpy. I'll give it all back. The money, the territory, everything. I don't want it back from you, Bumpy said. I'm taking it back from you. There's a difference. Bumpy's hand moved to his waistband. But Bumpy didn't pull a gun. He pulled out a straight razor. The same razor he'd carried since 1935. The same one that had opened Dutch Schultz's enforcer from ear to ear in a Bronx warehouse. The same blade that had convinced Lucky Luciano to let Bumpy operate independently in Harlem. Bumpy unfolded the razor slowly. The steel caught the light. You know what the Romans used to do to traitors? Bumpy asked conversationally. They'd make them eat their last meal. Then they'd execute them in public. Let everyone see what happens when you betray your emperor. Smooth was hyperventilating now, eyes locked on the razor. I'm not a Roman emperor, Bumpy continued. But I am Harlem. And everyone in this restaurant needs to understand something. He raised his voice so every person in Small's Paradise could hear. When I went to Alcatraz, some of you forgot who built this. Forgot whose streets these are. Forgot that respect isn't something you take. It's something you earn. He looked directly at Smooth. Marcus Henderson forgot. So now Marcus Henderson is going to help me remind everyone. Bumpy stood up. Smooth tried to bolt, but Junie was behind him in a second, gun pressed against his spine. Stand up, Bumpy ordered. Smooth stood, legs shaking so badly he could barely support himself. Bumpy walked around the table until he was face to face with the man who'd betrayed him. Then, with the entire restaurant watching, Bumpy raised the razor to Smooth's throat. Not to kill. To mark. In one quick motion, Bumpy cut a thin line across Smooth's left cheek. Not deep. Just enough to scar. Just enough to make sure every person in Harlem would know Marcus Henderson as the man who betrayed Bumpy Johnson. Smooth screamed. Blood ran down his face, staining his cream-colored suit. That's so you remember, Bumpy said quietly. Every time you look in a mirror, you'll see that scar. And every person who sees you will know what you did. Bumpy folded the razor and put it back in his pocket. You've got 24 hours to leave Harlem, Bumpy said. Take whatever you can carry. Leave the rest. If I see you after tomorrow night, I won't be this generous. He turned to address the entire restaurant. The rest of you, Bumpy Johnson is back. The rules are the same as they always were. Pay what you owe. Keep your word. Protect your people. Anyone who wants to test me, you know where to find me. Bumpy Johnson walked out of Small's Paradise at 9:47 p.m. on June 10, 1963. He left Marcus Anderson bleeding at table 7. He left 250 witnesses who would spread the story across Harlem by morning. By sunrise, every hustler, policy banker, and street soldier in Harlem knew the king was back. Marcus Smooth Henderson was on a bus to Philadelphia by noon. He never returned. That scar was his brand. A permanent reminder of what happens when you betray a king. Within 72 hours, 3 other men who'd carved up Bumpy's territory quietly disappeared from Harlem. Not killed. Just gone. Relocated with a clear understanding, stay away or join Smooth. The Genovese family, who'd moved into Harlem while Bumpy was locked up, sent a captain to negotiate. The meeting lasted 4 minutes. Bumpy's terms were simple. You've got 2 weeks to pull out of Harlem. Everything north of 110th Street is mine again. Non-negotiable. The Italians left without arguing. They'd lost 3 soldiers trying to hold Bumpy's old territory in the past week. The cost of fighting him was higher than the profit. Within 6 months, every piece of Bumpy's empire was back under his control. Not through war. Not through bloodshed. Through fear, respect, and calculated power. The night at Small's Paradise became Harlem legend. Old-timers still talk about it, about how Bumpy didn't need an army, didn't need speeches. He walked into a restaurant, faced his betrayer, and with 1 razor and 250 witnesses, reminded everyone who really ran Harlem. You can lock a man up for 11 years. You can steal his money, take his territory, turn his people against him. But you can't take his throne. Not if he's a real king. Bumpy Johnson proved something that night. Power isn't about who has the most guns. It's about who commands the most respect. And respect isn't given. It's earned through loyalty, intelligence, and the will to do what others won't when justice demands it. Marcus Henderson betrayed him for money. The Italians challenged him for territory. Every traitor thought Bumpy was finished. They all learned the same lesson. Bumpy Johnson doesn't make threats. He makes promises. And he keeps every single one. 11 years in Alcatraz taught Bumpy something crucial. Patience isn't about waiting. It's about preparing. He'd had years to think about what he'd do when he got out. Years to imagine Smooth running the organization. Years to understand that while he was locked away, his world was being dismantled by the people he'd trusted most. But instead of crushing Smooth immediately, Bumpy did something more strategic. He let Smooth see him. He let Smooth feel the weight of his presence. He gave Smooth a chance to explain himself, to say his piece, to understand that the jig was up. Then he marked him. Not killed him. Marked him. Because death would have been merciful. A scar that everyone in Harlem would see for the rest of Smooth's life, that was poetry. That was a message written in flesh that nobody could ignore. The scar said, "This is what happens to traitors. And everyone will know it." In the weeks and months after, Bumpy rebuilt what had been stolen. Not through violence. Through the simple act of existing again. Through the demonstration that he was still alive, still thinking, still 10 steps ahead. The Italians understood it immediately. The local operators understood it. Even the police understood it. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just back. He was angrier, smarter, more dangerous. And he was patient. The night at Small's Paradise was the culmination of 11 years of waiting. 11 years of imagining that moment. 11 years of planning how to make it perfect. And it was perfect. Not because anyone died. Because everyone who mattered learned the deepest lesson about power. You can take a man's freedom. You can take his territory. You can take his money. But if you take those things from the wrong man, a man with patience, intelligence, and people who love him, the price you pay will be permanent. It will be visible. It will be a reminder every time you look in a mirror. That's why they called him the Godfather of Harlem. Not because he was violent. Because he understood that real power doesn't need violence. Real power just needs the absolute certainty that betrayal will be answered. Marcus "Smooth" Henderson lived another 32 years. He died in 1995 in Philadelphia, his face still bearing the scar Bumpy Johnson had given him that night. People who knew him said he was a broken man. That he never recovered from that evening. That the scar, while shallow, seemed to wound him deeper with every year that passed. He'd betrayed a king and paid the price in a way that no death could match. Bumpy Johnson died in 1968, 5 years after that night. He suffered a massive heart attack while eating dinner at Wells Restaurant in Harlem, the same place where his story had intersected with so many others over the decades. But the scar Bumpy gave Smooth on June 10, 1963, lived on. It became part of Harlem's mythology. It became the story that fathers told their sons. The proof that in a world where the system offers no justice, real justice comes from somewhere else. From someone willing to wait. To remember. To act when the moment arrives. From a king who never forgets.